There's a moment at the Laureus World Sports Awards, the Oscars of sports, people call it, where the camera starts moving. The room is full of the greatest athletes on the planet. Novak Djokovic is co-hosting. Elena Del Don is nearby. Aryna Sabalenka has just been named Sportswoman of the Year. And the WTA's official camera, the one that belongs to the organization that tracks every single point, every ranking climb, every match result in women's tennis, that camera doesn't follow the Sportswoman of the Year down the red carpet. It follows a 20-year-old from the Philippines who is ranked 44th in the world and lost her last match 1-6 in the first set. Think about that for a second. Because that decision, quiet, institutional, deliberate, tells you everything about what's actually happening with Alexandra Eala right now and why this particular week in April 2026 might be one of the most telling weeks of her entire career. Let's go back a little because context is everything here. 2 years ago, Eala wasn't even in the top 100. She hadn't won a single WTA main draw match. Then, piece by piece, she started climbing. By March 16, 2026, she had reached a career-high ranking of 29, the highest any Filipino woman had ever climbed in WTA history. That's not a small thing. That's a landmark. But sport doesn't pause to let you appreciate landmarks, and what followed that peak was a slide. 15 ranking positions dropped. 2 losses that raised real, uncomfortable questions, specifically about clay, the one surface that seemed to have her number. Her clay record coming into Madrid was not just a soft spot. It was a pattern, a documented, recurring problem that kept showing up with uncomfortable consistency. She went out in the round of 16 in Linz. Then, in Stuttgart, she drew Leylah Fernandez, world number 25, 2021 US Open finalist, a player known for meticulous preparation, and the match was over almost before it started. First set, 6-1. Eala held one game. Second set extended things a little, but the result was the same.
6-4, gone.
What makes that loss even sharper is what happened after it, in Fernandez's post-match interview. She was asked about the difficulty of the match, and she didn't give a polished non-answer.
She went somewhere specific.
She told the interviewer that at 3-5 in the second set, with the match almost finished, her coach had to remind her, "Don't relax, she's not going to go down easy. You're going to have to take this." That's not what coaches say when they think a match is already won. And then Fernandez did something even more revealing. She reached back unprompted to a memory from the Rafa Nadal Academy, years before either of them were household names in tennis. She remembered watching Eala there, turning to her coach and saying out loud, "Wow, she plays quick." And her coach in Stuttgart, just before the match was decided, had essentially said the same thing back to her. "Look, it's exactly like you." The player who beat Eala 6-1, 6-4 spent her entire post-match interview explaining why that win was harder than it looked. She compared Eala to herself. Not as flattery, as a scouting warning. You don't say that about someone you expect to comfortably handle. Now hold all of that, the Stuttgart loss, the slide in rankings, the clay question marks, and place it against what happened 5 days later. April 20th. The Palacio de Cibeles in Madrid. One of Europe's most stunning buildings, a neoclassical city hall turned cultural space, lit up for the Laureus World Sports Awards. And Alexandra Eala walks in wearing a gown that wasn't pulled from a sponsor's showroom or borrowed from a European fashion house. It was designed by her uncle, Ret Eala, a renowned Filipino fashion designer, and built specifically for this night. A full beige chiffon dress with a pleated bodice, paired with a piña bolero. The piña fiber, woven from pineapple leaves, is one of the most distinctly Filipino materials that exists in formal wear. Her uncle stitched the Philippines into the fabric. She wore it into a room filled with the most decorated athletes in the world, 5 days after a 1-6 first set, carrying every question mark the clay season had handed her. That's not a styling choice. That's a statement about who you are and where you come from, made at precisely the moment when you have every reason to arrive quietly and disappear into the background. She didn't. The WTA's camera found her first. 74,000 likes on a single Instagram post, outperforming the organization's own coverage of the actual award winners. The caption was 5 words, from court to carpet. No ranking, no credential, no bracket context.
Just her name and a flag.
She took a selfie with Djokovic and Eileen Gu, two of the most decorated people in that building, and posted it to her story with exactly 2 words. Sandwiched between greatness. Not awestruck. Not performing humility. Just accurate. That's a very specific kind of composure, and it's worth paying attention to because composure under pressure isn't something you can fake across an entire week. It either holds or it doesn't. And the next morning, she walked onto the Aranxa Sanchez Stadium clay at the Mutua Madrid Open, and it held. Her opponent was Anastasia Pavlyuchenkova, technically a qualifier ranked 116th, but don't let that fool you. This is a 34-year-old professional who has competed at the highest level for 15 years. A former Madrid semi-finalist. Someone who knows clay the way most players know their own bedroom. The match took 1 hour and 31 minutes. Eala won 6-3, 6-3. She landed 68% of her first serves and won 76% of those points. Pavlyuchenkova, on that same clay that had produced a 1-6 first set just a week earlier, won only 50% of her own first serve points. Eala controlled the match from the 5th game of the first set onward, and she never let go. Now, one first-round win doesn't rewrite a clay season. Anyone being honest knows that. But there's something specific about that result that matters beyond the scoreline, and it connects directly to what Greg Rosetsky had already been saying before any of this week happened. Rosetsky is not a commentator chasing traffic. He's a former world number 4, a 1997 U.S. Open finalist, someone who has watched 2 generations of clay court tennis from a place of genuine professional understanding. On his podcast, he named Eala's technical problem directly, the serve. He said she was reaching the later stages of tournaments, but getting beaten in one-sided matches once she got there. No softening, no false comfort. He identified a ceiling and named what was holding it in place. But then he said something else. He said he would love to see her crack the top 20 on this surface. And then, she's too good a player not to make it into the top 10. A former world number 4, identifying a specific flaw and concluding in the same sentence that the player is too good not to reach the top 10. That's not cheerleading. That's a technical assessment with a conclusion attached, and it lands completely differently than a highlight reel caption. He also compared what she means to Filipino sports culture to what Manny Pacquiao meant, and described a behavioral pattern he had actually observed. Her matches sell out wherever there's a Filipino community. Tournament directors at WTA 1000 events are watching that. A player who drives sellout crowds at ranking 44 generates institutional attention that her seating alone would never invite, and everyone in that room at the Palacio de Cibeles already knew it. But none of this, not the ceremony, not the gown, not the Rosetsky assessment, can be fully understood without going back one more stop. March 23rd, Miami. Karolina Muchova, world number 13. The match lasted exactly 1 hour. Final score, 6-0. 6-2. 1 week after reaching her career-high ranking of 29, Eala was dismantled. That's the right word. Muchova didn't adjust mid-match. She didn't find her rhythm gradually. She controlled every dimension of that contest from the very first game, and Eala couldn't solve any of it. ESPN called it a dismal loss. That wasn't unfair. The score was the score. What happened in the days and weeks after Miami? The Stuttgart first-round loss, the glorious red carpet, the Madrid win. None of it becomes more meaningful by pretending Miami didn't happen the way it happened. It becomes more meaningful by sitting with what actually happened and then watching what came next. After the Stuttgart loss, Eala's post-match statement was plain. She acknowledged Fernandez as a great player. She said she needed to keep competing, needed to improve. There was no reframing, no scaffolding built around the result to make it look like something other than what it was. She said she lost, she knew what she needed to work on, and she moved on. And then, in the space of 5 days, she showed up to the Oscars of sports in her uncle's fabric, stood between Djokovic and Eileen Gu without blinking, and went out the next morning, and won on clay. That bridge, from honest acknowledgement to quiet action, is where the real story lives. Not the ceremony, not the gown, not even the scoreline on its own. The bridge between them. So, where does it go from here? The clay calendar is brutal, and it's moving fast. After Madrid, which runs through May 3rd, she's entered in the WTA 1000 Rome Open and the WTA 125 Parma Ladies Open in Italy. Then Roland Garros on May 24th, Paris. The French Open, which isn't just a grand slam, it's the specific tournament that will tell us whether her development on clay has moved from compelling story to legitimate contender. But before Paris, before Rome, before any of that, there's Elise Mertens waiting in the round of 32 in Madrid. Mertens is Belgian, experienced, consistent, and someone who performs with disciplined precision at WTA 1000 events. That's a completely different match from Pavlyuchenkova. The bracket gets harder from here, not easier, and Mertens has exactly the kind of clay court pedigree to expose every technical problem Rosetsky named on that podcast. Does the rhythm from the first round win carry? Or does the draw start to reveal the ceiling the clay season has been building toward all spring? That question doesn't have an answer yet. But here's what we know right now, in this exact moment. A 20-year-old from the Philippines absorbed a 6-0 first set in Miami, dropped in the rankings, lost in the first round of Stuttgart to a player who said she reminded her of herself, and then, 5 days later, walked into the most prestigious sports ceremony in the world wearing a piña bolero her uncle made with his own hands. She stood between the two most decorated co-hosts in Lauria's history and described the moment with 2 words. She went out the next.